Saluton kaj bonvenon. Dankon ke vi venis por aŭskulti min. Don't worry, most of the talk will be in English. That was a very quick taste of Esperanto, but this is a 35, 40-minute crash course in Esperanto. You're not going to leave here a fluent Esperanto speaker, of course, but you'll hopefully have a taste of what the language is about, what it is that excites people about it, why. I'll show you what we're going to cover. This is the plan for the next half hour. First up, what's the point of Esperanto then? Why does it even exist? What's it for? I'll say a little bit about that. And then I'm going to tell you what's special about Esperanto, about the language itself, what makes it different from other languages. Then what's special about Esperanto part 2, the community of Esperanto speakers is a super important part of why a lot of people come to Esperanto. And finally, a bit of time for Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat as we're going along. So, what's the point of Esperanto? You're probably aware it was created. It started off as the project of one man, Ludwig Zamenhof, back in 1887 when it was published. And at that point, it was a project of a language. It was a skeleton of a language which may or may not have taken off. More than a century after the death of the creator, we can pretty confidently say it did take off. It's a very rare example of a created language, an auxiliary language, which has outlived its creator and which has an active community of speakers around the world. So the idea of it, Zamenhof's dream, was that it would be a second language for anybody and everybody who wants to communicate with people from other language backgrounds. Not that it becomes the world language and stamps all of the others out. It's not that. I keep my language, you keep your language, she keeps her language. But we have Esperanto to talk between us, to bridge between those different language islands, if you like. Now, when you hear that, you might be thinking, well, hang on. This kind of reminds me of this rather wonderful cartoon, How Standards Proliferate. For example, phone chargers, character encodings, instant messaging platforms, and so on. Situation, there are 14 competing standards. And the nerds get together and go, hang on, 14? That's ridiculous. We need to develop one universal standard that covers everyone's use cases. Yeah. Soon, situation, there are 15 competing standards, and we see this happening again and again. And is this what Esperanto is? Is it just another language trying to compete with the others, but actually just adding to the problem? Yes and no. Let's have a look though. What's special about Esperanto? And why is it? Why don't we just use English for everything? Why don't we just use French for everything? Why don't we just use Russian for everything? And of course, there is English, particularly right now, has a very dominant role as an international language. Not exclusively, not the international language, but probably increasingly, certainly in the last 10 or 20 years, and possibly still now. So, what's the role of Esperanto? Well, the first thing is it's a neutral language, or it's as close to neutral as exists anywhere. It's not my home language. It's not your home language. It's not anyone. There are a very small number of people who grow up using Esperanto as a home language, but their numbers are very, very small. It's a language for anybody and everybody, but which belongs to nobody. So it's relatively neutral. It's an equalizer. If we're using English is my language. I speak pretty good English. I don't have to think about it. It just comes out as eloquent as I am, whatever that is. It's easy for me to speak English. There's no extra mental load. If we're having a conversation in English and you're not a native English speaker, you're having to put more mental effort in to speak my language. And you might well not be quite as eloquent or quite as fluent as you are in your own language. And so using my language creates this uneven playing field where I always have an advantage. And we see this coming up all over the place, whether it's in business or politics or just interpersonal relationships. If you're using language of the other person, you're at a disadvantage. You're relying on their goodwill to see their way through your mistakes and help and be willing to understand you and help you out. And it's an unequal dynamic. Esperanto is a great leveler in that sense, in that I can be sitting chatting to somebody from Japan and somebody from Russia and somebody from France and somebody from Italy, and we're all just chatting and just chatting away, just saying what comes into our head, and we've all kind of made a step towards each other and met in the middle rather than everybody meeting on my turf, which is nice. So it's relatively neutral, but the structure of the language itself is far more regular, far more structured, far more transparent than any other language that I've come across. And I've taught a few before, and I've learned a few before. And I'm going to give you a couple of quick examples of what I mean by that. Firstly, this is the word manji. Actually, sorry, before I do that, what I'm going to do now is give you 4 or 5 words in Esperanto. I'm going to teach you a few words in Esperanto. I'm going to do it entirely in Esperanto. There's a pretty good chance you'll follow it all. Then I'm going to ask you to find 4 words in Esperanto that I haven't taught you yet, and you're going to find them, and you're going to get it right. Let's see. Are you ready? To jen, mangi. Mangi estas verbo. Mangi, it's to eat, as you probably guessed. To jen, mangi. Kaj tio estas manĝaĵo. Manĝaĵo. Tiu foto estas manĝaĵo. Jen manĝaĵo. Poste, jen manĝejo. Foto de manĝejo. Jen manĝaĵo, jen manĝejo, kaj jen manĝilo. Jen 1, 2, 3, 4 manĝiloj. 4 manĝilo. Forko, kulero, tranĉilo, sed 1, 2, 3, 4 manĝiloj. Kaj la grupo de la manĝiloj estas 1 manĝilaro. 4 manĝiloj, 1 manĝilaro. Kaj jen manĝigas. En la foto estas bebo kaj patro. Ĉu la bebo manĝas? Ne. Sed la patro, ĉu la patro manĝas? Yes. La bebo ne manĝas. La bebo manĝigas la patron. La bebo manĝigas la patron. Kaj la patro manĝas. La bebo ne manĝas. La bebo manĝigas la patron. Do manĝaĵo, manĝejo, manĝilaro, manĝigas, kaj jen ujo. Ujo por la manĝiloj. La manĝiloj estas en la ujo. Jen. And now you're going to find some words. Are you ready? Here's a new route. Instead of manĝ with all of these, we're going to see drink. Drink. So, drinki is the Esperanto verb to drink. Kaj tiu foto estas kio? Kio estas tio? Tio estas trinkejo. Ĉu vi trovis tion? Trinkejo, jen. Kaj tio? Kio estas tio? Tio estas trinkujo. Ujo por trinki. Kaj kio estas tio? Tio estas... Kio ĝi estas? Trinkaĵo. Bone. Kaj jen. Tiu persono... What's the person doing? La persono trinkigas la elefanton. La persono trinkigas la elefanton. Now, if you're concentrating, if you're engaged, you've probably just found 4 words in Esperanto that I haven't taught you. You just found them. And that's a first glimpse of why Esperanto, why people acquire Esperanto so much more quickly than many other languages. When you see a pattern, it's going to work, and it's going to work right across the language. And you'll be able to recombine things that you learn with other things that you've already seen. And each new root, each new word that you add isn't just one new word, it's a whole new family of words, a whole new frontier of expression, of expressive capacity. Um, and just thinking about those words again, so we saw mangiajo, mangeio, mangilaro, mangigas, mangiuyo. So that's food, a dining room, eating tools, cutlery. We saw mangigas is feeding. The baby's feeding the father, and the uyo is a container. Now with drink, we saw so trincajo, a drink, trinqueio, a cafe, a place where you drink. At the bottom, we saw trincuyo, a drink container, but trinquigas. How do you say trinquigas in English? What's the English word for trinquigas? Now, mangigas was feeding, the baby's feeding the father. What was that person doing with the elephant? We can't say he was watering the elephant. That makes the elephant sound like a plant. He's pouring water in his head. He's drinking the elephant? No. I'm not sure what the English word for that is. We just say we have to go around it and say he's giving the elephant a drink, or he's helping the elephant to drink. But I can't think of a word that means trinquigas in English. So you've not only just found the word trinquigas in context, you found a word that it's at least quite hard to find the equivalent word in English. Maybe it exists. Maybe I've missed something, but I don't think so. And you just found the word immediately. That often happens in Esperanto, and it's a great feeling to be able to just find the right word, combine it, and spit it out. And it may be that trinquigas is probably not all that common a word, but when you need it, it spontaneously forms in your mind from the elements that you know already. You put them together, and it works. Now, of course, lots of languages have morphology like this, where you can combine bits of words together, put them together, and have a new word. But it doesn't always work. Certainly, with all the languages that I've studied, you can't just freely combine these things. One example, I was talking to some French friends, and one of them was talking. I was speaking in French, and one of them was talking about a minor road accident that he's had, just a bump in the car. And I wanted to ask, oh, so is the car still drivable? And so I said, alors la voiture est toujours. And I kind of hesitated for a second, and I guessed it conduisable. And everybody kind of giggled to themselves, because like, that's not a word, you can't say that. I was like, well, why is it not a word? Veturigebla would be a perfectly good word in Esperanto. Why can I not do that in French? And the answer is because that word just doesn't exist, and you can't do that. Everybody understood exactly what conduisable would mean. It's drivable, driveable. I just stuck the things together. In Esperanto, you can always do that. In other languages, there are holes in the language where you kind of want a word to be, but no, that's not a word. It's not in the dictionary. You can't use it. That happens far less frequently in Esperanto. So let's go a bit further. We just mentioned morphology. This is a thing in Esperanto that's hugely flexible, and every sentence, every conversation in Esperanto makes a lot of use of this word creation on the fly, putting together a root with a suffix and a prefix and another suffix, and put it together and spit it out, and it's a word that people immediately recognize, immediately understand. It may be a word that's never been used before, but it makes sense. Let's have some examples. So we're going to start with san in the middle. San is a root in Esperanto. It's not a word yet, it's just a root, but it's a root that means good health. If we want the adjective meaning healthy, then we need an adjective ending, sana. So sana is the usual word for healthy in Esperanto. It's an adjective meaning in good health. Unhealthy, the opposite, we add mal at the beginning. Mal doesn't mean bad, it just means the opposite of whatever it would be without the mal. So malsana is the normal word for unhealthy. It mirrors the form of the English unhealthy, malsana, literally the same structure in that word. Mal is used all over the place in Esperanto, but I'll mention that later. A sick person. Now we've had malsana as an adjective. This time it's going to be a noun with ul, the suffix that means a person, and a malsanulo is a person. If you read it from right to left, you can see it's a noun meaning a person in bad health. A hospital is the place where all the sick people are. So it's an malsanuleo. And malsanuleo is just the normal word in Esperanto for a hospital. Again, reading it right to left, you've got noun meaning a place for people in bad health. Yeah, so malsanuleo. There we go. Now, after that, we've got cured. Now, cured is kind of a difficult word in English. You could have been learning English for a good while and even had conversations about being ill and seeing a doctor and so on, and not actually come across the word cured, like the doctor cured me. So cured, what it actually means is it's returning to causing somebody to be back in good health again. And so we pull together the elements that mean that, and we get resanigis. Again, reading it right to left, you get it's a verb in the past tense, to cause, to be in good health. Again, to cause good health again. Resanigis. And that's how you say cured. The doctor cured me. Resanigis mean. Medicine is a tool in the broadest possible sense for doing exactly that. So it's a resanigilo tool, not like a screwdriver or a hammer, but they're also iloi in Esperanto, but il is for anything that serves a purpose. So medicine serves the purpose of causing good health again. So resanigilo. There we go. And the place where we store all the medicines, the medicine cupboard or the medicine store, can you see what we're going to add in to make that word? The medicine store, we've just had resanigilo for a medicine, and we've got a there. So we can add that in and get resanigileo. Now, to be honest, we're starting to stretch the limits of what people would normally do in Esperanto now. This is it's logically possible. It's not impossible to understand, but it's starting to get kind of on the long side. And if you use that word in a conversation, you're stretching people's mental capacity. We can take it a step further, though. We're now outside the bounds of what we would normally do in Esperanto. But it's entirely possible to use a word like resanigileulo, reading it right to left, a noun meaning the person from the store, from the place, with the tools that cause good health again. It's the guy who works in the medicine store, la resanigileulo. I wouldn't recommend using a word like that in a conversation, but it's entirely possible. There are more elegant ways to say things, like to say that, and for many of these things, there are alternative ways to say them. But the point is, if you don't know the more advanced words, you can build a word using simpler roots that means what you want to say. This creative generative use of the prefixes and suffixes is very, very common in Esperanto. It happens all the time. Every sentence you hear will be making use of prefixes and suffixes, and it allows the speaker to have a capacity of expression that is startlingly broad, given the number of elements of the language that they've actually memorized up to that point. And that's something that's really special in Esperanto. Each new thing that you learn gives you a whole new frontier of expressive capacity, not just one little word. A similar example, if we take words in English like the verb to see, saw, seen, then view, visual, visually. all of these things, they're all to do with sight. Oh, there's another one for the same family. They're all to do with the power of sight, but they're all, each one of those words is a new thing that you have to learn. You have to learn the spelling and the pronunciation and the meaning and the collocations it goes with. And each word is a new thing to memorize. In Esperanto, you'd have vidi, the verb, vidis, vidas, vidos, past, present, and future, is, as, os. And again, that works for every verb in the language. Is, as, os, past, present, and future endings. So vidis, vidas, vidos is the past, present, and future of the verb to see. So vidi, vidis, vidas, vidos, but then vida, vide, vidajo, vido, and we can use all sorts of endings and suffixes, all based around vid, and make this whole family of words. And then if we pluck out vid and we put in aud, we've got the same family of words, but it's to do with hearing instead of sight. So we've got words like aural, to hear, heard, hearing, hearily, is that's not even a word, is it? But hourly, I suppose. But there's no danger of making that kind of mistake in Esperanto, because it's just it's the same set of endings but with aud instead of vid. Audi, audis, audas, audos, past, present, and future of the verb to hear. Aude, hourly. Auda, aural. Audo, hearing. And all of those words are all based on the one root. And again, this happens again and again all across the language. And this is a natural way that people tend to express themselves. And we see this in mistakes that either young children, toddlers, or new language learners make when they're acquiring the language, when they're picking it up. Years ago, when my son was about 3 years old, he was once building some wooden bricks, and he knocked them over and giggled, and he said, "Daddy, look, Daddy, I builded a tower and I folded it over." Okay, now two mistakes in there, of course, but it was really cute, so I let him off. Builded a tower. What he's done there is take a pattern that he spotted and he's generalized it, and he's come up with the word builded. Now, he's obviously never heard anybody say builded, but he's used that word, assuming that it's going to be right. Turns out it's not in English, but it's a natural thing to do in language. You spot a pattern and you generalize it and you try and reuse it. What makes Esperanto so straightforward to acquire, to learn, is that these patterns that you see actually work, and they keep working, and the occasions when they don't work are very, very few and far between. I'm not going to say it's completely regular and there aren't any exceptions. You may hear people say that about Esperanto. They're either lying or they're deluded. That's not true, but it's true to a far, far greater extent than certainly than any other language that I've ever come across. So, this is one last geeky bit of grammar that I want to show you if I can squeeze it in. The participles. Now, Zamenhof set out to create a language that was easy to learn, but that wasn't the only aim. If that was the main aim, he would have created something like Tokipona. That's the easiest language to learn. But if you try and have any kind of detailed conversation in Tokipona, you quickly hit the limits of the language. That's not a criticism, that's what the language is for, but that's not where Esperanto is. Yes, it's simply structured and easy with an aim of being easy to learn, but it's also elegantly structured to give a maximum of expressive capacity for a minimum of learning and memorization. And this is another great example. I'll run through this quickly. We've got mangianta is an active participle, which means eating, like now, currently in the process of eating. So vi estas mangianta is you are eating right now. Vi estas manginta is you are finished eating. So manginta means the eating is now in the past. But in Esperanto, we also have future participles, which I've never seen in another language, but it makes perfect sense. Remember, with the tenses, we had is, as, os. In the participles, we've got inta, anta, onta. So that means the eating is still in the future. So vi estas manjonta means you are about to eat. You're on the point of eating. So with again, a minimum number of things to memorize, you get this huge expressive capacity in an elegant package where the inta, anta, onta reflects or mirrors the is, as, os from the verbs. And then we can put these inta, anta, onta, we can put the participles we can use them to describe things that happened in the past with estis, or situations that are going to happen in the future with estos. And you get this really elegant structure that yeah, mind-blowing. It's great. I like this. Mi estis, so that's talking about something in the past. I was finished eating, I was eating, or I was about to eat. Vi estas manginta, finished eating, manjanta, eating now, or manjonta, about to eat, and then the same in the future. And this is only half the story, because these are the active participles, and here, instead of inta, anta, onta, we've got ita, ata, ota, and they're the passive participles. So that's mangita, just been eaten, manjata, being eaten right now, and manjota, soon to be eaten. Now, if you're currently thinking, too much grammar, I can't cope with this, don't panic, okay? It's perfectly possible to learn Esperanto with a minimum of grammatical input. The more grammar that you already understand, the easier it's going to be, of course, that applies to any language, but don't think, oh God, Esperanto, it's just like a grammar puzzle, it's going to be like Latin. It's not. It's not. It's an order of magnitude quicker and easier to get to whatever level you're aiming at, whether it's just passably can have a conversation or whether you want to be a translator, a translator of works of literature. Whatever level you're aiming at, you will get there quicker in Esperanto, much quicker than you will in certainly any other language that I've come across. So that's what's special about the language. Now, what that does is it's kind of difficult to explain why this is the case. But when how can I put this? When I'm speaking English, obviously I'm speaking my language. It's my home language. I can adapt the way I'm speaking to help non-native speakers if that's who I'm speaking to, but it's my language. When I'm speaking French, I did a C2 level exam in French last year and I passed it. My wife is French. My kids are bilingual. I go to France all the time. I've worked in France. My French is pretty good, but it's not my language and it never will be. And doesn't matter how long I study it and how much I practice, I'm never going to speak it as well as just an average French person, which is kind of irritating in a way, but that's the way it is. I could be really good, but I'm still a non-native speaker. I'm still on their turf. I can do pretty well, but it's not my language. When I speak Esperanto, I feel like I'm speaking my language. The Russian sitting next to me and the Japanese girl over there and the French woman opposite me and the German guy over there, they all feel like they're speaking their language too. It's kind of nobody's language and everybody's language at the same time. And it's difficult to explain exactly how or why that happens, but I'm not the only one that says this. It it feels mine. I've as much right to be here as anybody else. I've got the same. I'm on the same level as everybody else, and it actually puts into concrete practice the thing that we've all heard a million times. Oh, we're all born equal. Everybody's the same. We all bleed the same. We're all just humans after all. It's a concrete realization of that, and that it's difficult to explain without actually doing it. But yeah, and that ties in nicely with the community, the Esperanto speaking community around the world. This is a quick set of photos from a typical Esperanto gathering, the kind of thing that I've been going to for the last kind of 15 years or so, and really, really enjoying and keep going back to. I wish I was at one now, but obviously we're all at home. Hopefully coming back soon. All of these things, party atmosphere and gigs, every gathering, always great fun. Learning, my favorite Esperanto gatherings are the ones with an active learning program. I'm often teaching, but I sometimes go as a learner as well, and I really enjoy that. So it's kind of part school, part fun, and that's an excellent combination, which we have at the at SES, the Somera Esperanto Lernado, which is coming up by the same organising team as the Polyglot Gathering, coming up in July, I think it is. And we also occasionally venture outdoors. The photo there that you see at the background was from Liptovský Mikuláš in Slovakia from a couple of years ago, as is the cave at the bottom right. So it's a mixture of socializing, of studying, of getting drunk and having fun, and all an intense week of total immersion in a foreign language, in this case Esperanto. And I love it. I keep going back for that. Actually, my initial motivation for learning it was the Pasporta Servo, the passport service, which is kind of like couch surfing, but with Esperanto. So I can go and find places to stay in people's houses for free across the world for the price of speaking Esperanto to people. Now, if you like traveling, it's an amazing way to travel and connect with local people in basically every country that you can name. There'll be people there who will put you up if you speak Esperanto to them. I'm in that book. Come and stay by all means. Not all at once, yeah. Okay, so that's what Esperanto has given to me. That's what lots of people find engaging about it. Last thing I want to say about this, and then I'll go on to the questions, is there's something I read a few years ago and suddenly realized it was true about me. And I asked around, and lots of my friends said, yeah, do you know what? Yeah, that's it. When you're at school, you make friends, and people my age and older have friends from school that are friends for life. If you go to university or college, you meet more people there, and you have a few of them will become good, solid friends for life. You might not see them even every year, but they're still a reliable, dependable friend for life. When you get past about 25, that suddenly stops happening. And you might socialize with your neighbors or the parents of your kids' friends or whatever. But if one of them moves away, you lose touch. If I move away, I lose touch with most of the people who live near me now. It's not that I don't like them, it's just not the same connection. The only really good lifelong friends that I think I've made in the last 10 years are Esperanto speakers who I've met at events like this. There are several of them who I would consider to be dependable, lifelong friends, and a whole host of 50, 60, 70 others who I really enjoy seeing again, catching up, having a beer, and chatting with. And it's been a huge addition to my life, and I invite you to do the same. There we go. I'm going to go on to Q&A now. I'm hoping that a question is going to come my way that I can answer. Okay, there's a question here. Are there how much time do you need to learn Esperanto to a communicative level? Of course, the answer to that is how long is a piece of string? It depends on the learner. It depends what you mean by a communicative level. The best answer I can give to that is an order of magnitude less than you would need if you were tackling another unknown language, whether that's Czech or Swahili or English or Danish or whatever. Massively quicker. Whatever communicative level it is that you're aiming for, you will get there massively quicker. I've taught Esperanto to primary school kids, and in the space of one school term, like 3 months, at the end of a term, a kid heckled me in grammatically perfect Esperanto in the middle of a class and made everybody else laugh. Now, that's amazing. He's using the target language to be cheeky, and everybody else understood it and laughed. That's amazing. That has never happened in any of my French classes. I teach French as well. That's not because the French classes are rubbish. I don't think they are, but it's just so much harder to do in French. It was years. I had years of learning French before I managed to crack a joke that people actually laughed at. It happened with an 8-year-old student in 3 months. That's an extreme example. I'm not saying they could all do that, but whatever you're expecting, you're going to get there way, way faster than you will in other languages. Hope that helps. Are there rules for the order of affixes and suffixes in generating a word? Yes. Each one acts on what comes before it. So, for example, hundo is a dog, hundido is a puppy. Ido means the baby one, the offspring. So hundido is a puppy. Hundideto, the et means a little one. So hundideto is a little puppy. Hund et ido, if you put the two suffixes the other way around, it would be a bit of a weird word meaning something like a puppy from a small mother. It would be the dog that's small with a puppy rather than a small puppy, if that makes sense. So yes, definitely are the order of the suffixes and affixes definitely is important. Each one acts on what came before it. Here we go. Next question, please. Tomek asks, how and who do you practice Esperanto with? Good question. I have, as I mentioned, several close friends who I chat with in Esperanto almost every day on Telegram and Facebook. There's a whole, as I mentioned, a whole group of people who I know more or less well, people that I've met at the gatherings. Of my 400 odd, I think it is, Facebook friends, more than half of them are Esperanto speakers, and so there's lots of interaction going on there. And I managed to arrange to teach at Esperanto events several times a year. Right now, it's all happening online, of course, but for a number of years now, I've been going to weekend events in the UK and 7, 8, 10-day events notably in Slovakia, the Somera Esperanto Studado, the Summer Esperanto Study. I've been to the States a couple of times and taught over there. So I go to events and practice with the people who are there over New Year. Usually from about the 27th of December for a week through to the 2nd or 3rd of January, there's an Esperanto event. There are several actually. There's one for families with kids. There's one for young people generally, and the young at heart. And that's usually in Germany or Poland. And yeah, we get together for a week, and all the conversation everywhere is in Esperanto the whole week, and it's a huge amount of fun. I'd recommend it. How much time did you take to learn Esperanto? Again, how long is a piece of string? I'm still learning. I learned a new word in Esperanto a couple of days ago. Don't ask me what it was. I've forgotten it already. Anyway, put it this way. In 2001, I was living and working in France. And that's where I met an Esperanto teacher. And I said, oh, teach me that, teach me that. So he did. In 2002, I was already a language teacher. I'd already spent a few years teaching English. But in 2001, started learning Esperanto. In 2002, started teaching Esperanto. And felt that I had a good enough level to start teaching. I wouldn't say I knew everything. Of course not. My level of Esperanto has improved since then, but in less than a year, I was at a level where I could confidently go into a classroom and teach beginners and get them up to at least my level. The guy who was teaching me actually said to me after about 18 months of learning Esperanto, he said to me, it was a colleague at work, and he said, you know what, when you write me an email in Esperanto, it works. It somehow sounds more like you're saying what you want to say rather than just saying what your French will allow you to say. You can do jokes that actually work. So, cheers, thanks. But whatever the criteria, whether it's number of mistakes or fluency of expression, it's better in Esperanto than it is in French. And my French was already, pretty high level. I was living and working in a French company using French exclusively all day. And yeah, in 18 months, in the opinion of my Esperanto teacher, I'd overtaken my level of French in Esperanto. I would say that depends on the context. There are some times where I feel more comfortable in French, sometimes more comfortable in Esperanto. But yeah, very quickly is the short answer to your question. Miron asks, the best online resources for learning Esperanto. Oh, excellent question. You can use Duolingo. Thousands of people do. In fact, it's not inaccurate to say millions of people have started at least the Esperanto course on Duolingo. There's now Esperanto for English speakers, Esperanto for Portuguese speakers, and I think Esperanto for French speakers is either on the way or may already have launched. There's a very active Facebook group called Duolingo Esperanto Learners where you can get help with that. Lernu.net, Lernu.net has been around for a good 10 years more than Duolingo, but is very, very good. It's a nicely structured course based on a reading text, and it's good to use in parallel, I think, with Duolingo. Duolingo's good to a point, but it doesn't suit everybody. And even if you really enjoy it and you think you're getting a lot from it, there are still big gaps that it doesn't help with. So doing another course alongside it is always a good thing, I think. So Lernu.net, Lernu.net, and Duolingo is where I would recommend starting. If you start those now, you will already have a level good enough to turn up at the Somera Esperanto Studado, which would normally be in Slovakia or the Czech Republic in July. It's going to be online, of course, but come along to that, have a week of immersion. So yeah, Lernu and Duolingo. Domek asks, how are new words created in Esperanto? I mean, especially new technologies, email, computer, mobile phone, and so on. The answer is much the same way as they are in English or anywhere else. The community of active Esperanto users either recombines roots that already exist to make a new thing, to make a new word, or invents a whole new word. And very often, for a little while, there are several competing terms for the same thing. And after a while, most of them fall out of use, and everybody settles on the winner, just like you do in English. If you look up a newspaper article from 20 years ago, they use the words internet and information superhighway interchangeably. Now that information superhighway sounds so ridiculously dated now, but at the time, that's what people called the internet. The term internet won out in that competition, thankfully. Now it may be that in another 20 years, we're going to find the word internet ridiculously dated, or why, oh, it's so quaint how they called it the internet. I don't know. And the same kind of thing happens in Esperanto. I have a dictionary from the 1960s where the word for a computer is given as computero. And okay, that may have been what some people used at the time, but I've never heard that in conversation. The word for a computer is everybody settled on is computilo. It's another ilo, just like the mangiloi, and the restanigilo that I mentioned earlier. So an ilo for computing, comput ilo. So we sometimes there's an active conversation going on at the moment around what's the word for a drone, and so some people just want to call it droneo. That kind of works, but it doesn't really explain what it is. Very often the term will be something that describes rather than just labels. So you've got things like sen pilota aviadilo, a pilotless plane. But of course, some drones are planes, some are more like helicopters. So it depends what kind of drone we're talking about. So there are many ways that people come at the problem, sometimes reusing existing words, sometimes throwing in a new word, and over time, we usually settle on one that everybody's happy with. Jamie, love the morphology. Are there rules for the order of affixes and suffixes in creating and guessing a word? I think I mentioned that earlier. Yes, there are rules for that. Each suffix acts on what comes before it. A couple of minutes left. How often do you speak Esperanto? Do any of your children have any knowledge of the language? Good question. What do you think the future of Esperanto looks like? That's 3 questions. How often do I speak Esperanto? I certainly write it every day with friends online, mostly in Telegram, either person to person or in groups. Do any of my children have any knowledge of the language? They've watched Mazzy. You might have seen the BBC's Muzzy series, Big Green Monster, that teach the kids watch in French, German, Italian, many other languages. There's an Esperanto version as well. It's on YouTube. It's in Esperanto. It's spelled Mazi, M-A-Z-I. You can look that up. So Mazi and Gondolando. They watch that. They certainly know what Esperanto is. They haven't. They don't understand it. They don't speak it. But I don't want to force it on them. I want them to go, "Hey, Daddy, can you teach me this thing?" And if when one of them says that, absolutely, yeah, come with me to this event. It'll be great fun. Right now, it hasn't happened yet, but that's not a problem. Most people are already adults when they start to learn Esperanto, and we reach native, whatever that means, level of fluency anyway. Esperanto is the only language that I know where most people reach a native-like level of fluency, whatever age they started learning. It's special. What do you think the future of Esperanto looks like? Who knows? Predictions are very hard to make, especially about the future. I think that is my last question. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you for the questions, and I'll see you around. If you have any other questions and you want to ask me them, feel free to track me down somewhere in the labyrinth of chat rooms and so on of the Polyglot Gathering, and I look forward to seeing you soon. I'm doing a quiz tonight as well at 10 o'clock Central European Time. Come along to that. See you later. Ci sono video.